All right, my friends, today is September the 8th. Let's go ahead and get into the market outlook and plans for the week ahead. Okay, so starting off with our events. On Wednesday, we have the PPI, and on Thursday, we have the CPI. I think that the CPI is probably going to matter a bit this week, so I will cover that later in the video. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off with the TradFi section. So per last week, the feedback was great about including this every week. So moving forward, I'm probably going to be doing that, just a little bit of boomer yap every day. So let's get into it. First things first, cover the S&P. Yo guys, hit that like and subscribe button for me. Appreciate it. I'm not going to get to the point where I'm covering technical levels yet. We'll maybe move to the setup aspect of things in the future, but I don't really trade the S&P that much, so it's more of an investment vehicle for me. I look at the S&P and the NAS. It's clear to me that, these are still in buy the dip zones, or in buy the dip modes rather, not from a price standpoint, but from a thesis standpoint. If there is a sell-off in October, opening into Q4, that is something that I'm looking at as a situation where I might do some potentially larger buys on the benchmarks, and outside of that, we're just DCAing dips and just chilling, treating it like the savings account. Pretty straightforward stuff. If you guys want, let me know in the comments, and maybe we'll consider actually starting to introduce more of a trade setup approach to the NAS and the S&P. All right, quick scan on gold. So like I've said before, I don't own any gold. I own silver, but I'm seeing gold just perform in this way. Definitely, makes me feel pretty optimistic about things. I understand that this is a risk-off vehicle, generally speaking, but I think that we're following a pretty similar pattern to what we did last year. So I think that, it's nice to see gold doing well. I think that this paves the way for, that kind of switch back in the direction of risk as we move into Q4. Quick notes on silver. Silver's obviously underperformed gold over the past several months, but, I picked this a long time ago as my investment vehicle, and I'm just kind of stick with it for now. I'm not really rushing to swap anything over, but it's just interesting to see that silver and gold are having their first little wave of performance, and it's been a long time. So I don't want to get into the big picture. I've already kind of covered that on some of the Paragon streams anyway, so you already know my thoughts as to why metals are moving the way they are. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So okay, macro on Bitcoin has no dramatic changes, right? It does clearly look like the bottom's forming quite nicely for us. I think you want to remain patient, but we are reaching that end of the seasonality argument as we approach Q4. So I feel optimistic about us trading up higher this year. I think that sentiment that we've seen recently has been, pretty abysmal. So honestly, we love to see that. Main talking points for macro are, like I just said, seasonality is very much coming to an end. Q4 right around the corner. If you do get some sort of wipeout move at the end of Q3 or the beginning of Q4, that's a classic script by the dip play for up only Q4. From a price standpoint, from a sentiment standpoint, that is exactly what you want to see for the up only Q4 thesis to really play out. Still advocating for steady benchmark buying, right? If you want to buy Bitcoin, you want to buy the S&P, even maybe some of the large cap coins that I wouldn't consider to be benchmarks, but they're not too far off from it. I think it's totally within reason. You want to be light on alts still. I think that the chop is, coming to an end. I think that the volatility regime that we've been in is, been in a downtrend. And I think that, as we approach Q4, you should expect the volatility to see a big uptick here soon. So I'm not going to try to long that by any means, but I think predicting upticks in volatility is really, stupid, but you want to keep that in the back of your mind for how you're approaching trade setups, because we've been in a very reversion-y choppy market, and I don't think that that's gonna be the case here soon enough. So like I said last week, we were looking to see how we were going to interact with 110k. Currently now we've I don't want to call it flipped 110k, but it's a version of support right now. So local supports are going to be 110k and 100k. We don't really care about 100k, or technically 90k is macro support as well, but for right now, all eyes on 110k. As far as resistances go, I basically say the price point where we're at right now is a significant local resistance. We can cover this on medium time frame here in a minute anyways, but essentially, this like 112, 113-ish is going to be a little bit tough for bulls to get through, so I do think that we're probably likely to reject here, hopefully make another higher low, and then break through it. The main resistance, though, like we've been talking about for a long time, 120, right? We called 120 way before we even got there, just basic psychological level. I think that 120, the next time it's tested, is probably going to get smashed through. So, definitely look at it in that regard. That's pretty much it, right? 110 got flipped, I do like to see that. I wouldn't necessarily call it, flipped from like a trade setup standpoint, but like, you look at the chart, clearly It's, at least a week support right now. Do a little bit of medium time frame yap. Medium time frame, pretty straightforward. This is the doodle that we shared last week, and this is what we're operating off of, right? The idea is very clear, very straightforward. We want to see a rounded out bottom take place, a pseudo range / rounded out bottom between these two previous ranges. If we don't see this continue to develop, which it looks like it is clearly, if we were to see a more bearish, situation where we traded down lower and didn't really continue to build out this range, then it takes us a lot lower at that point, right? So, local, support, is, 107, I would call it, all the way down to 105. So you start to really lose 105 in a convincing manner, and you probably are trading down in the direction of 90K at that point. So the plans are really straightforward. Can patiently wait for this rounding out to take place. I think that, as we trade into local resistance on the range reclaim, I don't think that you should be overly optimistic that 113 is going to get broken through and just smashed, but who knows? Maybe it will. If we do convincingly smash through it, then maybe, we get some sort of front run, bull momentum, taking place into the end of Q3. As far as alts go, right, like, the large cap big coins like Solana, these are the only things that I'm really strongly advocating for. Solana, the Solana Treasury, meme, argument is clearly playing out in front of us, and it's probably going to continue to. I think that ETH will probably do well again, but, I think that it's probably not like the highest EV for me to continue to bet on anymore. So I'm not going to sell the ETH that I've bought for the record, but I'm also not like sprinting to buy more, because I think that by the time that the ETH play like really starts to materialize and heat up for people, I think that Bitcoin will have already kind of restolen the show. And once Bitcoin restills the show, it's going to be time to move further down the risk curve anyway. So I did buy up some more ETH, like I had said. My average is probably like 41.5, maybe something like that, right? But 41.5, I should say. I'm not going to be adding to that though. If I am going to be adding to safe plays, it's going to be Solana and Doge right now, while I patiently wait for the main play, which I've been sharing this with you guys for a long time, right? The idea that we wait for Bitcoin to give us that risk on momentum signal, and then we start really heavily allocating to alts, right? So still advocating for that argument that you don't want to be sprinting to alt allocations. You want to be really slow and steady with them, but just to run through some of the things I think are interesting, like, for alternative layer 1 plays, I think Hype is smart. I think that, maybe some meme coin plays are going to be winners. If you want to be smart with it, maybe you go RWA or DeFi, or boomers are pretty straight, forward plays as well. My plan, which is subject to change because everything has to be adapted to what's going on in the moment whenever I'm actually buying stuff. But my main plan is just to focus on memes. I'm probably going to focus on memes. I might add a little bit more to layer 1 stuff, but I think the memes, if Bitcoin's going to do the leg up to 150 like I am hoping for, I think the memes are going to be the thing that just rip during that stage. A lot of coins will go up, don't get me wrong. We'll have our alt season, for 4 weeks or whatever, or 3 weeks, who knows, right? But I'll probably have a more concentrated bet on memes. I think that the reflexivity and the attention getting that memes get is just going to make them go up the most. And then, the flip side argument to that is you got to be quick to sell them eventually, right? Because memes will go up the most and then they'll go down the most, right? Okay, that's it for alts. That's pretty much it for the outlook today. So closing thoughts on some content yap. So I'm gonna be probably trying to do a little bit of server work this week, try to clean up the server here and there. I've got some education I'm working on, but like I said last week, I'm very much in recovery mode. I called it recovery season last week. I'm a workaholic, so don't get me wrong. I'm still getting stuff done every week, but I'm trying not to push myself as hard as I normally would, because I kind of had several months of pushing myself, so it's good to give yourself a week or two, maybe 3 weeks, whatever, to just chill. Next month I'm probably going to take a little vacation as well, so just kind of chilling a little bit, staying, always moving forward, right? I don't have the ability to not work at all, but yeah, anyways. So if you see me being lazy at any point, that's probably why. It's like forced laziness on my part, which I think that some of you guys should consider allowing yourself to do that in these kind of slower periods, right? As Q4 is approaching, right? And it's really good to kind of have that reset, store up that energy, maybe get a dopamine detox, any of that kind of crap before things get wild. Because, if the Q4 thesis plays out, it'll be just, it's pretty overwhelming, right? Mentally to deal with all that, right? When it happens. So take care of your brain. All right, guys. Cheers. Good luck. Hit me with any questions that you might have.